Dialogue and deliberation are the cornerstone concepts in policy debate. To facilitate an effective use of each of these tactics, one must first look towards the use of truth and logic. For many, logic simply means reasoning, but to understand your opponent's logic, we try to find the structure of their argument and break it down into simpler premises. First, we must know that there are four specific issues the affirmative team must address, consisting of significance, inherency, solvency, and topicality. In order to accurately interpret your opponent's motives and deduce the honesty of their argument, we must use the two devices of deductive and inductive reasoning. Now, let's consider someone arguing for the legitimacy of a burning a flag. It is considered unpatriotic to burn an American flag, and if someone burns an American flag, then they are considered unpatriotic. This is deductive reasoning at its best. The ability to simplify your opponent's argument will become infallible to you during your debates. Deductive reasoning starts from a premise that is a generalization about a large class of ideas and moves to a specific conclusion about a smaller category of ideas or things. This method is useful to the negative team because while the affirmative team is reading their initial case, the first negative speaker must gather evidence and quickly deduce the basic outline of the affirmative plan and be able to present logical arguments against them. If you work hard enough, you can often take a complex argument and boil it down to a few key points. Now we must consider swans. I've only seen white swans, though this means that all swans are white. This is inductive reasoning and is good to call upon in a tight spot where not a lot of knowledge is present on either side. Inductive reasoning will be the most useful for the affirmative team in creating an effective plan to affirm the resolution for the year. Inductive reasoning starts with a particular statement and moves to a more general conclusion, like a stacking of evidence. The more particular examples you give, the more it seems that you can solve for your dilemma. But you must remember to use enough specific evidence to clearly demonstrate your point. If you rely too heavily on this logical method, it might lead to you being led to the belief that if you find 10 articles that state the same thing, then it must be true. It is good to know the basic 6 elements to any argument when trying to establish legitimacy. Claim is your basic standpoint presented by the speaker. Data is your evidence supporting your claim. Warrants are the justification for connecting particular data and to a particular claim. Backing is additional information required if the warrant is not clearly supported, usually needed in the second constructive speeches because no new evidence can be presented after the last new constructive. Now, rebuttals come next and provide an opportunity for each team to point out flaws in the opposing team's claim. Finally, there are qualifiers that you can use in order to limit a standpoint of the opposing team that can be useful, such as sometimes, seems, occasionally, none, always, and never. These terms place doubt in judges' minds about some of the arguments of the opposing team, if used properly. Now that the basics are covered, there are some rules to go over. The affirmative team has the burden of proof rule placed upon them at all times. If you make an argument, then you have to provide evidence to back it up. The standpoint rule relates to the topicality violation I mentioned in the beginning of this speech. If you are not on topic, expect to have a completely separate debate about whether you are topical or not. There is also a required relevance rule to your evidence. If you cut your evidence to state what you wanted to say, the opposing team may also attack this. One of the most important rules is the unexpressed premise rule, stating that to falsely present what has been left unexpressed is to rephrase someone's standpoint in a way that redirects the argument. This rule is constantly violated when your opponent tries to claim victory through indirect means, like saying that your plan states something, but they are only inferring the premise under false pretenses, putting words in your mouth. Since you're not going to let people put words in your mouth, a good way to get your point across is through the use of analogies. One of my favorites was about baseball and its relation to having a topical affirmative argument. Basically, you're informing the judge that the affirmative team is up to bat, and their plan is the ball. Now, the foul lines are the bounds of the resolution, and by being untopical, the affirmative team is hitting that ball, or their plan, outside the foul lines. I cannot express how many times a good analogy has won over the judges for me. A good analogy allows the judges to be able to understand you clearly and gives them a definitive choice and a view of the choice they can make when they pick either team's side. When presenting these analogies, make sure that your beginning and ending premises match up and logically relate to each other, or else your entire argument will be seen as flawed. And make sure to actually know what you are talking about. This is the usage rule, and if you're going to argue about it, then actually know what you are arguing about to present valid arguments. Aristotle once said, "For a certain extent, all men attempt to discuss statements and to maintain them, to defend themselves and to attack others." Defend any statement. Argue till it's over. Remember to smile and never give up hope, because you never know what that judge is going to do.